Welcome back to STEM Lab, my friends. It is great that you are here, even though we can't have questions and do back and forth today. We've got some good things to share. So we've been talking about Africa and the adaptations that animals have in order to live in different parts of Africa, in particular in the savanna and in the desert of Africa, the Sahara Desert. And we're not really going to stop talking about those things, but we're going to start changing what we talk about. We're going to have other animals that we talk about. We're going to have different parts of the world we talk about. And like we did the other day when we kind of looked at the 3D printer, we're going to talk about some other things too, because just because we're talking about animals and plants and their adaptations doesn't mean that we can't talk about technology, because the scientists that study those animals use a lot of technology. In particular, they're starting to use things that are in space. So they use satellites to keep an eye on large herds of animals, like the wildebeest. We talked about the wildebeest. The wildebeest move in a pack of 2 million wildebeest. You can see that from space. So they watch how they move from space. They use different kinds of technologies to track them. So just because we're talking about animals and plants and adaptations and different kinds of environments that creatures live in doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about technology. So we're definitely going to do that. So we've talked about adaptations. And if you've forgotten what an adaptation is a change that a plant or an animal makes either to their structure, their bodies, or to their behavior. And so really plants are the only ones that can't change their behavior, because they're just plants. And they just do what plants do. So there's our trusty picture of Africa. I'm going to move myself to a neutral area. There we go. And we've talked about the Sahara, which is this dry, dusty, hot area in northern Africa. And then we've also talked about the savanna. And the savanna is kind of in this transition area. So the Saharan desert is dry and hot, and both the plants and the animals must adapt to those conditions. The savanna is in between the desert and the very, very wet rainforest. And we've talked about how the savanna is sometimes like the desert, where there is no rain for months and months and months and months and months. And then all of a sudden there's a lot of rain. There's more rain than the land can handle. So that is the main adaptation, or the main obstacle that animals and plants have to adapt to in the Sahara. So in the desert, it's dry and hot all the time. There really isn't a change in the seasons in the Sahara Desert. There isn't a nice time of year. It's the same all the time. But the savanna it has a big change. It goes from being dry to the point where there's no water for months. And then it's wet, or it's raining every day. So the plants and the animals have to adapt to those changes. So the Sahara Desert, it says little to no rain and high temperatures year-round. So like I said, there isn't a lot of change. If you're a weather forecaster in the Sahara Desert, you probably have a pretty easy job. You're not really having to do a lot. And that's because it looks a lot like this in a lot of the Sahara Desert. It is sand with some plants and some animals. And there's the animal that we talked about. So if we think back to the sand cat that we talked about, the sand cat is uniquely adapted to live in the desert. And even though it looks just like your cat that you might have at home, and they're super cute, they definitely are, you wouldn't want them in your house. They are not used to you, and they wouldn't know what to do inside your house. So they are adapted to live in the desert. So they change their behaviors, and they've changed their bodies. one behavior that they do, and if we think back, I'm thinking back, yep, they change their behaviors. They do one thing, and that's they hunt at night. And they do that because it's hot during the day. And they don't want to waste their energy having to deal with that hot weather, so they decide to hunt at night. So that's when they look for their prey. And their fur kind of does a double duty. So their fur keeps them warm when it's very cold at night, which it does get in the Sahara. And then it also protects them from the sun. So if you've ever seen people who wear long sleeves and long pants out in the sun, you might think to yourself, my goodness, that must be hot. But if they're out in the sun, getting hit by the sun is much worse than having your skin covered and not being able to sweat and breathe. So their fur protects them from the sun. And then another adaptation that's physical is they grow fur on their paws. And they do that to protect their paws from the very, very hot sand dunes. And then also because the desert is so dry and there isn't any water for most of the time for them to go and get a drink from a lake or a river or even a puddle, they get most of their moisture that they need from their prey. So whatever they eat, that's how they get their water. So the savanna. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the savanna because it is a very unique place. There really isn't, at least as large of a place like the savanna anywhere else in the world except for Africa. And they have wet seasons and dry seasons. And the savanna, kind of like how the desert is totally covered in sand, the savanna is covered in grass. And here's a nice picture of the savanna at sunset. And we can see all that grass and then maybe a few trees. And we have definitely talked about the trees of the savanna. And in this one, in this picture, those are the acacia trees. And here's another really good picture of the savanna. We can see some hills in the distance, but no mountains, no big forests. The trees are, look like shrubs most of the time. And then look at all that grass. The baobab tree. Oh my goodness, I remember the baobab tree. Do you guys remember the baobab tree? So, growing in the savanna, the baobab tree has to deal with dry season, wet season. So the way the baobab tree does that is you can tell, you look at this picture, it has got a really big trunk. And in that trunk, the baobab tree stores up water. So during the wet season, it stores that water. It gets as much water as it can from its roots and pulls it into the trunk. And then during the dry season, it lets it out. And then there's the acacia tree. And if we think back, well, the acacia tree does not have a trunk like the baobab tree does, right? It's not a big, gigantic trunk. It's kind of a regular tree trunk. So what the acacia tree does is it grows a taproot that goes way, 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 way down. And it gets down to the water table. And that's where there is kind of a slushy, sandy, muddy goop down there. But there's enough water for the acacia tree to have enough moisture during the dry season. And this is a good little picture that I like that kind of shows us the two different strategies. So on the left there, we have the baobab tree where it stores the water in its trunk. And it's not getting the water from deep down in the earth. It's just collecting all the water it can during that wet season. And then on the right-hand side, we have the acacia tree. In the acacia tree, you can see its root is going way deeper, and it is absorbing that water from deep down underground. So two different strategies for the same problem. What do you do when there's no water? The baobab tree on the left stores it in the trunk. The acacia tree on the right gets it from deep down in the earth. So the wildebeest. And I don't think I've ever typed it up for you guys. So that is how you spell wildebeest. It's easy to misspell. And it's hard to hear too sometimes. Because I remember I have heard when I was little, I thought it was a wildebeest. Like, a buzzing bee. But nope, it's a wildebeest. So if we think back to how the wildebeest is adapted to live in the savannah, there's a couple of things that we can think of. So if we remember the video that we watched on the wildebeests, we learned that the babies or the calves can keep up with their parents when they're only 2 days old. So we see there a young wildebeest, and it's able to keep up with its parents and the members of its herd. And if we think about why would they want to do that? Why would you want a 2-day-old wildebeest to be able to keep up and run alongside its mom and dad? Well, there are predators just waiting to get a bite of wildebeest. And if the baby wildebeest can't stay near its mom or dad or other members of its herd, and if we take a look at this picture, that baby wildebeest is missing something. It's missing horns. So we see the horns there on the grown-up wildebeest, and the wildebeest uses those horns to protect itself from predators and to protect their young. So if the young wildebeest can't stay close, it can't keep up with them, then it's in trouble. And then you say to yourself, well, why do they need to keep up with them? So we have to think about the savannah. The savannah has the dry season and the wet season. Now, plants can store water in their trunks or grow deep roots, but the wildebeest cannot do the same thing. The wildebeest can't store water. It can't dig down underground with its horns. So what they do is they migrate. They move from the dry part of the savannah to the wet part of the savannah. So when there's the wet season in one part of the savannah, they move to the area that's having the wet season. That way they can find food and water. So the baby wildebeest need to be able to keep up while they are migrating. Okay, they can't wait because they're going to run out of food and water. So they need to get to that wet part of the savannah. And so the baby wildebeest need to be able to keep up. There's a herd of wildebeest. We can even see a zebra in the back. They're probably doing their migration right now. They're probably migrating from the dry part where they're at right now. You can see the grass is yellow and dead. And they're going to move to where they can find green grass. Oh, the lion, the king of the jungle. So the lion is also adapted to living in the savannah. The lion has its own special adaptations to be a lion that makes it different than a wildebeest, right? It has sharp claws, sharp teeth. It can run really fast. It's very strong. But the lion is also very unique, and it uses that uniqueness because it's in the savannah. The first thing I think of when I think of a lion is its powerful roar. And its roar can be as loud as thunder. So we remember that from the video. As loud as thunder. That is very, very loud. So we might ask ourselves, why would it need to have such a loud roar? What is the point of having a roar that's as loud as thunder? So one of the reasons is they need to scare away other lions. Because the lions aren't afraid of anyone else. They're not afraid of the wildebeest. The wildebeest aren't going to come in and attack the lions. And tigers and bears don't live anywhere near where the lions live. And no other creatures are big enough to even try eating a lion. A hyena is too small. Cheetahs are too small. Leopards are too small. All those creatures are too small to even think about trying to eat a lion. So the lions don't use their roar to scare away predators. They use it to scare away other lions. So this lion here, that's a boy lion. We can tell because he has his big flowing mane. And he uses his roar to tell other boy lions to stay away from his territory. See, he has his own hunting grounds. He has his own mates. He doesn't want them anywhere near his things. So he uses his roar to say, get away. And if he has a powerful and scary enough roar, that lion isn't going to even come close. He's going to say, you know, that sounds like a scary lion. Now, if he doesn't have a powerful roar, that other lion might say, well, he doesn't sound so tough. I think I can take his hunting ground and his mates. So you need to have a really powerful roar. And then the other reason lions need their powerful roar is to communicate with their pride. And you say, their pride? What's a pride? Well, the pride, if we remember, is the group that lions live in. So lions are unique because they don't live by themselves. They live with other lions, which most big cats don't do. So tigers and mountain lions and other big cats do not live with other members of their own species. They live by themselves. Lions live together. They can live in groups up to 30. So you think to yourself again, well, why would they want to do that? And then we have to think about, well, what do the lions do? They hunt very big prey. Zebras, water buffalo, wildebeests. Those are all big creatures. And lions need help bringing those creatures down. Because the lions need to eat lots of meat in a day. So they need to bring down or kill very big creatures. So the lions need help. So they get some friends and they have their pride and they hunt together to bring down the big prey. And there's some lions right there. That looks like a male lion and a female lion. It's a nice picture. So that brings us to the end today. So I have a job for you guys to do. So we should have some time left in our class and you guys should be able to complete your task pretty easily. So all of you, both second and third graders, it's optional. Second graders, you have to do it. I want a picture from you. Okay, so I want you to draw or create a picture yourself. I don't want you to take a picture. I don't want you to get one off the internet. I want you to make a picture of your own. So you can do that yourself. So if you're very good at your computer, you can make a drawing on your computer, or you can make a drawing with crayons, with pencils, with painting. You could even do a chalk drawing and take a picture of that if you want. But you need to make your own drawing. And I want it to be of a creature. And I want you to be able to tell me next time we're together and we can talk, to tell me about this creature. How is this a creature adapted to live in its environment? Where does it live? If it's a space creature, how does it live there? So it doesn't need to be a real creature. It can be imaginary or it can be real. So you can draw me a lion or you can draw me a space lion. Okay? I just want you to think about how that creature is adapted to live in its environment. Okay, so if you draw me a wildebeest, you need to be able to tell me, Mr. Thompson, the wildebeest has horns to protect itself and its young from predators. Okay, and if you draw me a space lion, you need to tell me, how does this space lion live in space? And what's it eating in space? I want to know. I'm very curious. And then third graders, you have an extra assignment. You guys need to go to your Google Classroom, and I have a quiz for you to take. So the second graders, you do not need to do that because you don't have a Google Classroom. Third graders, you need to take that assignment, okay? So I will see you guys next time we're together in STEM Lab, and we'll be able to talk. So I want to see your pictures, second graders. You have to do it. Third graders, if you want to do it, you can make me that picture. And third graders, please take the quiz. All right, guys, I will see you next time in STEM Lab. Thank you very much.